Hello there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan, and today's video is going to have spoilers in it from the first episode of Skeleton Crew. Now, I was pretty surprised when I watched that first episode. I didn't realize that there would be a pretty awesome action sequence in what really should be a children's show. Not just any action sequence, mind you, but one of my favorite types of Star Wars action sequences, the very tricky and dangerous boarding action. A lot of great Star Wars stories have them, and some of these movies and TV shows even start with them. Like the classic boarding of the Tantive 4 that started everything in the franchise. In Rogue One, you also had that massacre by Vader, which was pretty cool. From a cinematic point of view, that first shot of the ship coming into the scene in Skeleton Crew reminded me a lot of the first scene in Knights of the Old Republic, as the Endar Spire is getting boarded by Sith troopers. Then we had that really brutal scene with Baylan Skoll tearing his way through that New Republic cruiser. And of course, how can we forget Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi's heroic boarding of the Invisible Hand during the Battle of Coruscant to rescue the Chancellor. And of course, there's also Mando Bro and Bo-Katan taking out that Imperial Gazanti class freighter. I feel like I could go on forever with this, but no one really does boarding actions better than pirates. It's almost like a baseline skill if you are in that industry, whether you're on a man of war or a tiny sloop. Being a pirate is all about finding a freighter or cargo ship laden with treasure, disabling and then boarding it using ladders, hooks, Tarzan rope swings. It's aggressive, it's violent, and like any good Waffle House brawl, it's costly. People always die in a good boarding action. And that's because stopping a ship and then trying to board it while people on that ship don't want you on board is always going to be a sketchy proposition. But at least during the Age of Sail, if you missed your target, you landed in the ocean. If you miss in space, however, you will meet the cold embrace of vacuum and gently drift away into a nearby star, because there's no way your pirate comrades are going to come and get you when all that booty is on the line. So therefore, the stakes are always going to be higher in space. This is why boarding sequences on starships are always going to be a lot of fun. Now let's take a look at the sequence of events that happen here. First, we're going to take a look at the merchant vessel, which the captain calls a bulk freighter. Except this is kind of a smaller bulk freighter. It's maybe a Corvette-sized vehicle. No bigger than a frigate, definitely. It's actually not that much larger than the Tantive 4 that we see getting boarded in the beginning of the first Star Wars movie. If you place this ship side by side with the CR-90, you can see that the CR-90 is probably a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter, and thinner around the middle. The middle area in the bulk freighter is much thicker, and this is probably why this vessel rates as a bulk freighter. But other than that, the cockpit up front to the blockade runner style engine arrangement in the rear makes this ship very similar to the CR-90 Corvette. I wouldn't be surprised if we're dealing with a Krillin Engineering Corporation ship here. They were famous for building freighters in this class. Although the middle area kind of looks more like a Gallo-free yards kind of design, something like the GR-75 maybe. Should mention that unlike the CR-90 with its 11 Gyrodyne Terror 58 ion engines, this ship only has 8 engines configured at the rear. Engines that again remind you of something that would come out of Krillin Engineering's freighter division. Now onto the pirate ship. This thing is much bigger, probably at least 150 to 200 meters at its widest point, and closer to 300 meters long. But this vessel is also very vertical. There's many decks. It's kind of reminiscent of the Crimson Dawn yacht used in Solo, or Satine Kryz's own luxury yacht. This ship has 2 large bodies connected by a long structure that seems to be bristling with weapons in the middle. This is generally why you have very vertical looking ships like this. It's a way to basically stack weapons on top of each other without having them block each other. It gives you overlapping fields of very deadly fire. Now, if you take a look at this first scene of our poor freighter, we see debris floating in space before anything else. There seems to be a great deal of carbon scoring and damage on this ship as well, which shows us that this vessel took some energy fire before it was eventually halted. I imagine with a pirate ship of this size, they're going to be able to have a tractor beam on board, which halts the momentum of whatever prey they're trying to chase. Basically what they do is hammer away at the shields of the enemy ship, forcing that captain to redirect more energy to the shields and away from the engine, which makes them much more vulnerable to getting trapped by that tractor beam. Without halting the momentum, it's incredibly difficult to board a ship you don't have control over. Now, the boarding spikes they use to latch onto this enemy ship are brilliant. They're launched out of the sides of the pirate ship with enough force and penetration that they can cleanly get through the whole armor of an enemy vessel. But since these ships are pressurized, these Umbilical cords also have the ability to completely seal the area that they pierce through, preventing explosive decompression, which is, very dangerous in these situations. I mean, it's such a huge problem that In the Expanse, which features some of the most realistic and best space combat I've ever seen, has a lot of starships like the Rocinante going into battle with the entire crew in spacesuits and with the ship depressurized, so that when rounds do breach the hull, there's no explosive decompression. Now, the technology that these pirates are using most likely was pioneered by the Separatist Alliance during the Clone Wars. You had a shipbuilding company known as Colicoid Creations Nest. They're a bunch of insectoid aliens that loved creating weapons that were great at committing war crimes, basically. Amongst their creations was the Drach-class boarding ship. This was basically a small transport pod with 4 massive blades designed for piercing through the hull of any ship. What made the Drach-class so deadly was that it could track a moving target and land on there, separate from a larger mothership. You could also pierce the hull of a ship with multiple pods from different directions, creating a huge headache for defenders on board. Colicoid Creations Nest also made the aquatic and very space-capable Trident-class assault ship, which kind of looks like a giant squid. Again, absolutely terrifying and great at breaching hulls. Now, the pirate frigate here has 4 umbilical assault cords. The strategy is brutal and blunt: overwhelm the enemy from one direction. Even though they know you're coming, it doesn't really matter. I'm actually surprised that the merchant ship could withstand 4 of these claws hitting in one area and not compromise the entire structure of the ship. I guess these pirates were smart enough to aim these umbilical cords in the right direction without really damaging the structure of the ship. Otherwise, this thing will just, break apart. Another thing you might notice is, although the pirate ship has plenty of gun emplacements on board, only the merchant ship is firing once the umbilicals are attached. The pirate ship is very well armored and seems to shrug off most of these hits, although the umbilical cords are far more fragile and quickly destroyed. I imagine there's also a mechanism on board these umbilical cords that when there's a breach detected, the doors at the end of the cord basically shut down, preventing both ships that are attached to it from, again, venting into space. The pirate frigate also has a bigger open hangar. We see it in some of the other shots when it's docked at Port Borgo. This allows them to deploy smaller snub fighters, which I'm sure they have. It also allows them to deploy sapper units who focus on destroying the enemy turrets. Even though these pirates are pretty brutal, they do value their own lives and the lives of their men. I mean, the whole reason why the crew mutinies against Captain Silvo is because this boarding operation resulted in the death of many pirates, and the reward they received was extremely small. And so yeah, the pirates don't use their own gun emplacements when they have their friends on board basically taking it over. They also could be trying to preserve this ship in case they want to capture it and use it for their own purposes. When the claw enters the enemy ship, they spread open and latch onto the interior, which prevents the enemy ship from flying away and escaping. If you take a look at the crates of produce and other stuff in the ship's hangar, it seems like the pirates have breached the bulk freighter storage area. Generally, a warship the size of this bulk freighter will have 100 or 200 crew. But because this is a bulk freighter and they are prioritizing efficiency and automation to save money, there's only maybe a few dozen on board instead. And all of these individuals are armed with a sidearm and ready to fight. We get this kind of tense standoff period before the pirates breach, which really just looks like a scene-for-scene reshoot of the boarding at Tantive 4. There's only so much you can do in these type of situations. It's going to be bad. In close quarter combat, no one really wins. It seems like the pirates have pressured their new hires to go through the door first, through the murder hole. I mean, they don't have the element of surprise here. This is just a terrible situation to be in. But the pirates really don't have any other choice but to throw bodies at their enemy until that breaks up their rhythm enough for the pirates to advance. Now, it's surprising that the crew of this freighter fight back and are so coordinated. I guess they either are personally invested in the ship and in the cargo somehow, or they fear what happens to them if the pirates take over. No one wants to be sold off into captivity. Some of these individuals would rather die free than be a slave, so I understand that. Now, there is something kind of strange with this whole situation. The pirates targeted this ship because it has a large magnetically shielded vault. That basically means it's blaster-proof. I'm guessing the pirates were tipped off about this ship and targeted it specifically. And they were pissed when they realized that the vault didn't really have anything inside of it. I have a theory that maybe this is a bait ship that was employed by the New Republic to distract or draw out pirates just like this. The vessel did seem to have more armed crewmen than you would normally see in these kind of situations, although there were no New Republic soldiers or police or Marines on board to aid these people, so I'm guessing that might not be the case. Although, knowing what we know about the New Republic government during this period of time, they were just too occupied by other stuff and probably too busy to care about pirate patrols. It's also possible that these pirates were just really unlucky, and they attacked a ship that had already emptied out its vault. Anyway, let me know in the comment section below what you think has happened here. Also, let me know what you think about my analysis. As usual, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. My name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.